Alrighty, so in this video, which is also being streamed on my Twitch right now at 2 in the morning, and I had to find another tier list maker because that other website wasn't working anymore. I'm going to be tiering the Destiny 2 Warlock armor, the exotic armor, and for this list, it's going to be strictly for PvE. I'll have another video that will come out after this covering the PvP ratings for these armor. And then if you're wondering what I'm doing with all these videos is if you have looked at my channel in the past, I have a big spreadsheet for all the exotic weapons and armor pieces for each of the classes. And it's all in a Google Sheet document and they're all tiered and I have a bunch of explanations and notes and stuff like that. However, I haven't been doing a really good job at upkeeping all the information or keeping up, sorry, with all the information and all the tiers, and I just kind of gotten lazy and busy, really. That's my only excuse for not updating the sheet. So once I finish coming out with all these videos, I'm going to be doing Warlock here. Then I will have the Titan and the Hunter armor sets uh, video tier list, and then I'm gonna take all this information, put it in the Google Sheets, gonna uh, rework the notes that I have put down, and then the Google Sheets will is still available, but it will be available in its new glory or whatever you want to call it. So for the Warlock armor pieces, let's start off with the helmet pieces. So first up we have, I'm going to do my best, this is all from memory. The first helmet we have is Apotheosis Veil, and how Apotheosis Veil works is when you cast your super, you get all your abilities back, pretty much. Similar to what casting, I believe if you cast Nova Warp as Warlock, you already get all your abilities back. So I don't think Apotheosis Veil would work with that, or if that's still the case for Nova Warp. When you cast Super, you get all your abilities back. It is useful, but I wouldn't say its usefulness is that great or synergizes that well for certain pieces of content. I think for solo content, especially if you're like top tree Nova Bomb and say you use the Vortex Nade, you could charge the Vortex Nade up, cast it, cast Super, so you cast your Nova Bomb, then you get all your abilities back. You can do a second Vortex Nade on top of it. However, it's this method of casting your super, getting your nade back is kind of stupid in my opinion when you have Controverse hold over here, and its combination that you can use with top tree vortex nades. The way Controverse hold works is when you damage enemies with your grenade, you have a chance to be refunded a random amount of grenade energy back. And if Apotheosis Veil has to compete with something like that for top tree Nova, then it's a no-brainer that Controverse is going to beat it every single time. The other thing is that, like, I guess maybe for bottom tree Void, it could be useful for Devour. So you use Devour, you cast your super, and then you've got your nade back to heal again, which I guess could be nice. But the thing is, the fact that you have to use your super in order to take advantage of this exotic, just I don't think it's that great, to be honest. With how many other um, exotics there are that are head on head with this exotic, it's not, to be, in my opinion, it's not that great. I wouldn't say it's an exceptionally like amazing exotic, but it's definitely not. It's not like a useless or completely like trash tier exotic. So I'm just gonna give it a C tier. Next helmet we have here is the Fellwinter's Helm, not Fellwinter's Lie. It is the Fellwinter's Helm, and which when you cast, if you deal Void, Solar, or Arc melee damage, it casts a suppressing field out from your punch. So when you punch an enemy with your ability, I believe your ability has to be up for your melee. So you punch with the Void ability, and I believe if you get the kill, it casts a big suppressing field up. It was interesting when it first came out, for sure, especially pairing it with Warmind Cells when Cells came out with this build at first. I definitely do think nowadays you could pair it up with certain exotic weapons and Warmind Cell like combination builds, Charger with Light combination builds to make like a suppressing setup where you're always suppressing enemies and whatnot. However, it's pretty much like Warmind Cells can do the role of what the Fellwinter's Helm is trying to do, which just really a Warmind Cell mod over an exotic, like taking an entire exotic armor piece slot up. It's a no-brainer to just take the Warmind Cells over. And I wouldn't say the suppressing effect is completely useless, but it's definitely not. This is not something I've ran in a very long time. Like for Apotheosis Veil, I've run this at least once in the past, I don't know, season or so. But this, I have not used it since it came out. And I wouldn't say it's completely useless because the suppressing effect is definitely very useful, but it's just not useful enough um, because of how Warmind Cells are and how the Void Affinity Warmind Cell mods work. How you can have the suppressing Warmind Cell effect pretty much just take Fellwinter's Helm's job. Next up, we have Dire Skull of Ahamkara, instant F tier. When this bad boy was in its former glory, definitely S tier. Now F tier. In the PvP version of this video, maybe it might see a little higher placement in the tier list. However, that's only really because of the damage resistance you get off of wearing this exotic. Its main perk is that it refunds super energy based off of your super kills. However, what ends up happening is it doesn't matter if you kill a yellow bar or a red bar, you'll still get the same amount of super energy refunded. So it doesn't matter if you have this exotic equipped and you use your Nova Bomb to kill like a mini boss or something, you're still going to get the same amount of energy refunded as you would if you killed a red bar, which honestly to me makes it absolutely useless. Before it would scale and you pretty much get your super back. It would have been better if the nerf made it so that you didn't get your super back, so you got maybe like 3/4 back if you killed a mini boss or like a yellow bar or like even like if you finished a boss, you just only got 3/4. That was the cap, but that is not how this exotic works now. You pretty much just get nothing. Even when you kill red bars, you pretty much just get nothing. It is absolutely useless. F tier. Next up, we have Verity Brow, and Verity Brow works when you get kills with your energy weapons. You get grenade energy essentially, and when you're getting energy weapon kills, you also get these stacks called death throws. And when you throw your grenade, your nearby allies receive grenade energy. And I believe the death throws stacks up to 5 times. So pretty good, I'd say, especially in content nowadays. This game is kind of become an ability spammer over gunplay. Sad to say, especially in PvP, but that's just how this game is. So, and with how useful some nades are in endgame activities, I really do think Verity's Brow is a top tier exotic. Definitely above C, but I wouldn't go as far to place it in, as S tier. If you know Error, EHOAR, his videos, in a lot of his videos he's wearing Verity's brow. Um, but even though from a prolific YouTuber as himself, who pretty much uses all this time, he would probably rate it as S tier. I wouldn't rate it as S tier. It's probably like an A tier. I wouldn't say Verity's brow is like a go-to to for me, especially when there are two other exotics in this list that just perform way better for your team. I feel like if these other two exotics didn't exist or weren't as good as they are for the Warlock class, then this is definitely like it would be in the S tier. But to me, it's more of an A tier type of thing, especially when there are competing exotics like Controverse Hold for the top tree void, nade damage and nade regeneration that this has to compete with. It's just it's a good exotic, but it's not S tier, I guess is what I'm trying to go at. Next we have Nezarec Sin. Nezarec Sin, instant S tier, and especially if you're using energy primary weapons like really anything. When you get kills with your energy weapon, with your void energy weapon, it generates ability energy and super energy. And you don't have to just be using a void subclass. You can be using, I believe you can be using a solar or arc subclass. You just have to be using void energy weapons in order to generate ability, energy, and super energy with Nezarec Sin. Back in the day when Recluse was extremely broken, this was probably one of my go-to exotics to run when I was just messing around with like bottom tree void with Devour. I would have constant nade uptime, and then for top tree, so you can spam Nova bombs. You can have like constant ability uptime. It's a very good solo exotic. Kind of good when you're playing with teammates. If you're not playing on well, I'd say definitely use Nezarec Sin. However, if you are playing on well of Radiance, I wouldn't be using Nezarec Sin. Um, Nezarec Sin is more for the Void, because with Arc, um, Arc subclasses as a Warlock, I would just run Chaos Reach, and with Chaos Reach, you generally want to run Geomags. You probably wouldn't want to run Nezrax. So, and then if you're playing Solar Warlock, you're probably playing Well of Radiance, and you're probably using Phoenix Protocol or Lunafaction Boots. You're probably not going to be using Nezrax, even though Nezrax can be used with the Arc or Solar subclasses. It's really for just it synergizes the best with the Void subclasses. So, but still S tier. Next up, we have Astrocyte Verse, and in terms of PvE, F tier. I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge if you can challenge yourself if you want to using Astrocyte Verse and Blink in PvE. Be my guest, but using Blink in PvE, not that great. It's more of a PvP option. F tier. Next, we have Crown of Tempest. Crown of Tempest, I think A tier. Um, actually, I don't. I would go on as to put it S tier in PVE, and in PvP, I would also put it as S tier just because of how it works. Um, when you're getting arc kills, you generate ability, and you can get, I believe, super energy as well. And I really like using this with, of course, top tree arc, Stormcaller, Tickle Fingers, and I like using it with Risk Runner. You proc Risk Runner, you get the arc conduction, you get your you go on a killing spree, you get the times 3, I think, conduction times it's called. You get your abilities back a lot faster than normal, and I believe you also generate super energy, especially if you have like what is it? I think it's Grenadier as one of the modifiers for your strike or whatever activity you're doing. If you have Grenadier on, you throw a grenade, or whatever, and you get your conduction times to 3 stacks, you get like instant nades every time you throw a nade. It is a really fun exotic to use with top tree Stormcaller. So for me, S tier. Next up, we have Dawn Chorus. Dawn Chorus, interesting, exotic, but it's just right now with how light-based subclasses are, it's just really hard to take advantage of this exotic. Your best bet using this exotic would be using bottom tree Dawnblade, where you have the Dawnblades that track and refund super energy when you get a kill with the Dawnblade. Um, However, if I could have like Icarus dashing with the bottom tree Dawnblade Super with how it is and how good it is for PvE, then I would use this exotic, I think, a lot more in PvE. However, it's just right now, Well of Radiance is just so damn good. I don't know why you be running Dawn Chorus right now as a Warlock, unless you're just trying for something new, something different, like, it definitely does work. Dawn Chorus definitely buffs your super to do a ton of damage, and you can kill champions relatively easy with Dawn Chorus. However, it isn't like a GM type of armor piece you're going to be using. Well of Radiance is kind of a staple for Grandmaster content, and for raids, I wouldn't say it's completely useless, though, like how Fell Winters has become and how dire Skull is. But I wouldn't say it's better than a Verity's Brow. I would say it is slightly better than Apotheosis just because how it buffs your super. I just think buffing your super is a little bit better than just getting your abilities back on a super cast. So I'm going to give it a B tier. Next up, we have Eye of Another World. Eye of Another World, it just buffs your ability regen in um your ability regen, so your nade, your melee, and I think your recovery it boosts. And then the other thing is it marks priority targets. And in PvP, I think it can only mark one priority target and it highlights them, similar to how One Eyed Mask works now. And then in PvE, I think it can highlight multiple targets instead of just one. And I do like using this when I'm playing Stasis Warlock, because with Stasis Warlock, I feel like there's just not a lot of good exotics that synergize well with Stasis Warlock. I think Apotheosis Veil can synergize well with Stasis Warlock, and probably, but even better, Verity's Brow would synergize well with Stasis Warlock. And I have Another World increases it decreases your stasis cooldown times, so you have even faster nade timers instead of because in general, if you didn't already know this, the stasis nade for Warlock has a longer uh, wait time than just using a regular solar nade. So I believe that is still true, because when you say, for example, you throw a solar nade, it comes back in 30 seconds. Well, your stasis one, if you have the same amount of discipline, it comes back in 40 seconds. So with I have Another World, it just makes it so that, hey, instead of it coming back in 40 seconds, it comes back in like 35 seconds or something like that. I wouldn't, but the thing is, like, beyond helping out your stasis subclass, it's not very good. So probably D tier. I feel like giving it C tier is a little too generous, just with how like Verity's Brow exists. Verity's Brow could just do it a little better than Eye of Another World, especially if you're using the Stasis subclass. And then the last Warlock helmet we've got here is the Stag. And the Stag, it just buffs your Rift regen. If you're critical damage, your Rift regen comes back faster, and then when you die, you drop the Rift on your body. I wouldn't say it's absolutely useless, because it is nice if you're dead for you to have a rift on your body for your teammates to revive you. However, kind of useless in master content and grandmaster a Nightfall content when you get one shot, even in a rift, um, especially if you're not playing cover. And it's just most content you can just self res, so not useful. Maybe in raids it can be very useful, but in raids you're probably bringing S tier exotics with you, not D tier exotics like the stag. So yeah, D tier. Next up, we're going to be looking at gauntlets, Warlock gauntlets. So the first gauntlet we're looking at here is necrotic grips, and these bad boys pair very well with Thorn, because when you get a melee final blow with necrotic grips on, it casts a poison effect. And the poison effect can chain to other enemies, cause them to die from poison, and it can just you chain poison, 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 it just spreads. And with Thorn, on your Thorn kills, it creates that poison effect you would have gotten if you got the melee kill. So with Thorn, it's definitely very potent. But the thing is, for a lot of end game content, you're probably not going to be using Thorn and you're probably not going to be using Necrotic Grips. However, for like mid tier and low tier content, like I don't know, like Blind Well, Heroic Events, Legend Strike, or whatever, I mean, these could be fun to use. However, they're not exceptionally good. I honestly just give them C tier. They're not like Dawn Chorus buffing your super or anything like that. It's very limiting with how you have to play with these. However, when it's paired with Thorn, pretty damn good. So I'm just going to give it the C tier treatment. Next up, we have Controverse Hold. Instant S tier for me. A little bias going towards Controverse Hold here. However, these bad boys make Top Tree Nova Bomb insane. When you charge your Vortex Nade with these things on and you cast your Vortex Nade, any kill or damage tick that it does within the refresh rate of Controverse Hold's perk, it grants you grenade energy. And pretty much if you throw this thing at mini bosses or some elites, you're pretty much going to get your nade back. If you've ever watched Esoteric's solo Grandmaster videos, he's pretty much always running Controverse Holds and Top Tree Nova Bomb. Because what he does is he stuns the champion, he throws out the nade. The nade does a ton of damage because he charged the nade all the way up. It does a ton of damage to the champions he's attacking. And then every other tick of damage that he does to the champion, he pretty much gets a random amount of grenade energy back, and pretty much with the amount of damage he's doing with how long the vortex nade lasts because he charged it up all the way, he pretty much gets his grenade back. And that's why Controverse Hold is S tier. Obviously, this exotic doesn't work if you're playing um, with solar or nades. I don't think it works with solar nades. I only think it works with void nades. So obviously you can only play as void warlock, but still, even with that limitation, it just makes top tree Nova Bomb really, really, really good. Next up, we have Sunbracers. Sunbracers, pretty damn good. When you get a melee kill as a solar warlock, you get infinite solar, uh, the vortex nades, the solar nades. And I'd honestly say this is A tier. I've used it not as much as I have in the past, but for certain content and certain bounties, it's very nice to be able to get a melee kill and then spam infinite nades. And not only can you spam infinite nades, if you're playing as Top Tree Dawn, you can consume a nade and then have infinite nades. So you can get heat rises and have infinite nades at the same time. And with how good Top Tree Dawn's melee is, with how much damage it does, and how you're able to refund yourself the melee energy if you're in the air, you can pretty much have constant melee uptime and constant Sunbracer uptime using Top Tree Dawn. So A tier for me. Nade spamming is very nice. Next up, we have Winter's Guile. And Winter's Guile buffs your melee damage after getting a melee kill. With how meleeing is currently in this game, I wouldn't say it's F tier. These might pair well with like 1-2 punch, shotgun, legendaries, kinetic, or energy. However, I just don't see a lot of utility in, oh, now my melee does more damage because I got a melee kill. Like, okay, who cares? You're not, and most of the content in this game, you're not going to be running up and punching them as a warlock, especially with how squishy and, well, not squishy, how crap warlock melee is for warlocks in this game. Yes, you we have the as a warlock you have the extended range. However, who cares about the extended range? Your melee is slow as crap compared to the other classes. Honestly, not really worth it with what you're sacrificing to use in terms of exotics. If you have no other exotics, then I guess you can use this, but really not a great exotic. F tier. Next, we have Getaway Artists. Getaway Artists, artist or artist, I think it's just artist, allows you to consume your arc nade. You get a little arc buddy. This arc buddy is better than the bottom tree Stormcaller's arc soul that you get. The arc buddy shoots faster, more frequently, and I believe it has slightly better targeting than the arc buddy or the arc soul of the bottom tree Stormcaller's rift. When you cast your rift, people who go into your rift receive an arc soul. However, the arc soul, or the arc buddy as I like to call it, from Getaways are a lot better than the arc soul from the rift. um for PvE, it can make dealing with certain like low tier ads, trash tier ads better. It's more of a fun exotic. I wouldn't say it's that great an exotic, especially how you have to consume your nade. If you have a way to have high nade uptime, using this exotic can be pretty good, especially with how much easier it is to stay alive in PvE versus PvP. Um, it has its uses, but I haven't used it in the past 6 months. I wouldn't say it's a very meta exotic. It's more of just like a fun exotic to have. And I wouldn't really, I feel like giving it the C tier treatment is kind of pushing it right now. So I'm going to have to give it the D tier treatment. It's not completely useless, but it's not like an average tier. It's more of just like a fun, like meme exotic, really. Next up, we have Aeons. Aeons for the Warlock, S tier, especially with the rework. Without the rework, I it would probably be like B tier, because with Warlocks they get the nade energy back, which is quite useful. Hunters get their dodge back, which is kind of that sucked. And then I think Titans got melee back, that they changed it to. And then they completely reworked it to the new system. And the new system is very useful, especially the one where you can finish champions and elites to generate heavy ammo and special ammo. That to me is very nice to have, especially in things like Gambit, which you can count as PvE content where you need heavy, and in Grandmasters, where if you're running stasis, maybe you can just run Aeons. Since normally if you run Chaos, or if you run Arc in GMs, you're running Chaos, so you're running Geomags, and then if you're running Solar, you're running Well with Phoenix Protocol, and then Void normally uses Controverse Hold or Nezrax. And then if you're running Stasis, there's not a lot of Stasis exotics right now, that are exotics that synergize well with the Stasis subclass. In my opinion, Aeons is a pretty good pick. So definitely S tier. S tier exotic just because you can generate heavy from thin air. Next up, we have Karn Scenes. Karn Scenes, I think, are pretty okay. Just because of how getting melee kills pretty much gives you uninterrupted healing for X amount of seconds. I can't remember how long it is for, but these things can save your ass in certain situations. However, I wouldn't go as far to say that they're like a Dawn Chorus type of exotic, where the utility they provide is so so much better than everything else that's sitting down here. Um, I would say it's probably slightly better than Apotheosis Veil. I would probably give Karnstein's like a C plus. I definitely think Karnsteins are a lot better in PvP than they are in PvE. I did use these ones for the day one DCS clear that I did. I swapped to Bottom Tree Nova, and then I had these on because I pretty much needed everything that I could to stay alive. And having Karnsteins be able to heal myself after killing like a red bar and just getting uninterrupted healing, that was a really nice thing to have. However, I definitely don't use these things a lot in PvE. I guess I would recommend using them if you have nothing else. But the uninterrupted healing is pretty nice to have, but it's definitely not a very very strong PvE exotic. So next up we have, I believe they're Claws of Ahamkar. You get 2 melee charges. Um, just really C tier for me. Having 2 melee charges is nice. Really, I feel like C tier is pushing it. It's more like D tier for me. Having 2 melee charges is nice. You could have 2 celestial fires. You could have 2 um, stasis melees, the freeze. You could have, I mean, 2 of the Chaos Reach ones, but it's like if you're running Chaos Reach, just run Geomags. If you're running Solar, you're probably running well with Phoenix. This is only really good if you're running Stasis, but even with Stasis, I just feel like just run Aeons if you're doing Stasis, or run Verity's Brow if you're doing Stasis. It just really, to me, it's D tier. It's better, definitely better in PvP, especially if you pair it with Stasis, because exotics like Monte Carlo exist. But if you're using Monte Carlo in PvE and you're using this, well, you're probably playing lower end content or mid tier content. You're probably not playing end game content like the GMs and the raids and whatnot. So D tier, but it's not as bad as these. I think having 2 melees is better than buffing your melee damage. And then the last Warlock Gauntlet we have here are Ophidian's Aspect. Ophidians, what they do is they buff your reload speed, your weapon handling, and they buff your melee range. Essentially, they give your weapons quick draw, and these will be slightly better in season 14 when quick draw itself the perk itself gets nerfed, because these will retain pretty much quick draws um, old perk sets, what they could do, giving you like near or close to max handling for your weapons. And then the additional melee range is pretty nice, and the the reload speed is also pretty nice if you don't have reload mods equipped. However, with how the meta currently is with Well and Chaos Reach, you could really only reliably use this with Stasis. However, there are just, for how ability spammy PvE is and how much ability save your ass in PvE, I can't say taking Ophidians is really a smart move. Um, and uh, it's hard to put them at C tier almost, but I feel like C tier is where they belong. I think having the additional reload speed is nice, but that's really all you've got going for. I don't think additional melee range is that great in PvE, and maybe increased weapon handling's nice, but really that's as far as it goes for me. Um, I would say the reload speed in itself is just better than all these. Just having increased reload speed off an exotic without having to slot a mod, that's pretty nice to have. But it's not that strong. Next up, we're going to be talking about the chess pieces. And the first chess piece, Phoenix Protocol. I've been parroting this the entire video. S tier, especially if you're, well, the only subclass you're going to be using is Well of Radiance. If you're using Well of Radiance with this thing and you have teammates with you and they're getting kills inside your well, you pretty much are going to get your well back. You're going to have like 3/4 of your super back by the end of your well, especially if there are a bunch of ads around you and your teammates are focusing their fire on them and getting all the kills that they can while in your well. So S tier for me. Next up, we have Chromatic Fire. Chromatic Fire in PvE, kind of useless. And PvP has more uses, but just get Dragonfly on your weapons. I mean, you can make your kinetics do Dragonfly damage, have the Dragonfly explosions, but it's just like just use an energy weapon that has Dragonfly. It's just so extra to waste an entire exotic weapon or exotic armor slot in order to get Dragonfly on your kinetic. Just use Ace of Spades. Yes, it makes a bigger explosion than normal. That is that of your subclass. So if you have Void, the Void subclass on, whenever you get a kinetic headshot, it creates a Void explosion. I guess that's nice to have, but for a lot of content, wasting an entire exotic armor piece slot up on your loadout just so you can have, Dragonfly for kinetic weapons, that's really, I mean, that's just a big waste to me. F tier. Next, we have Mantle of Battle Harmony. This new exotic, I'm definitely going to give S tier, just with how useful it is to have your supers in this game. But on top of that, just how useful it is with certain setups, with energy setups. If you're running, even in endgame content, however, it doesn't work with stasis yet. That is until they add more stasis weapons into this game, which Bungie has announced they are planning to do. Then Mantle might see even more usage. Now that I think of it, I feel like S tier is pushing it a little. It might be more of an A tier type of an exotic, mostly because you are limited by how the weapons you bring in, and with how Grandmasters are structured and how Master Nightfalls are structured, and not really with raids right now, but with how GMs and certain activities are with match game, it's really hard to use Mantle, especially if you need to bring a well, but you need to use a void energy weapon. Well, you can't use Mantle because you need to be using a solar energy weapon so you can benefit from Mantle's perks. And I feel like that is keeping it from being S tier, is the fact that it's really hard to synergize your weapons with Mantle and a lot of endgame content just because of how Bungie makes it with the modifiers. I think if modifiers like that, if you could just use anything in endgame content, then it's definitely S tier. But to me, it just kind of sits at A tier, and especially since we don't have stasis weapons yet, you can't use stasis with Mantle, which kind of sucks. It's just A tier right now for me. Next up, we have Sanguine Alchemy. And if you know from back in the day, the way this exotic used to work is that if you sit in your well, it would mark priority targets for you with a huge X, and you could see them through walls, and you could see all ads through walls. Definitely very useful in PvP because it gives you pretty much free wall hacks. However, it doesn't work like this anymore. The way it works now is that if you cast a well and you have this exotic on, or not a well, I don't know if it works with well or not. I haven't tested that in a very long time. But with your rifts, like Empowering Rift or Healing Rift, if you get a kill in the Healing Rift, it pauses the timer, the countdown timer on your Healing Rift. and I believe it just like adds a second, so it extends its um longevity. So say your rift lasts for 10 seconds, you get a kill, oh, it's still in 10 seconds. You get another kill, it's still in 10 seconds. You keep getting kills, it just keeps pausing it and extending its lifetime. Don't really think that's all too useful, especially with how the new 100 system works, with how you can have 100 recovery and just pretty much get your rift back in 13 seconds, or 30 seconds or whatever it is for PvE. Um, I just don't think it's very useful now. Next up, we have Vesper of Radius. Vesper, I think, is only really good if you're using stasis. And if you're using the stasis aspect, that when you cast your rift, it freezes enemies, and then what happens is Vesper creates the shockwave, so it destroys all the frozen enemies. And that is a really fun combo to do. It definitely has saved my ass a few times in solo content. However, I wouldn't say Vesper is like an end game type of exotic. It's more of a mid range, low tier type of PvE exotic. It just, and it's not as good. It's not as good as these other exotics. I'm gonna have to give it D tier instead of C tier, just because really I think the only subclass that pairs well with is stasis, and I mean, yeah, I don't think. And stasis isn't that big of an end game like powerhouse. Yes, it's good in combination with certain classes and certain end game activities. However, if stasis were just like how well is good in all tiers of content, then maybe it would have more of a say. But just Vesper only works with your Rift, and it only works the best when you have the enemies frozen first for you, and then Vesper kills everything around your Rift. So D tier for me. Next, we have Wings of Sacred Dawn, F tier. You float up in the air, and you can ADS now, and you can keep yourself in the air, and you get damage resistance. Who cares? If you're in the air, you're gonna die, especially in PvE content. If you're in the air, you're probably gonna die. Um, that's just how it is. Even in PvP, if you're in the air, you're probably gonna die. I don't think the damage resistance you get from this exotic is that significant. Because you have to be in the air using it, and you're so limited by being in the air in this game that it's just not good. F tier. Next, we have Storm Dancer's Brace, I believe it's called. All I know, it's something Storm Brace, the Storm Brace. And what this exotic does is, I know for a fact that when you're using top tree or bottom tree Stormcaller, over time it just makes your Stormcaller do more and more damage. So it's like Don Chorus except for Stormcaller. However, it's, I wouldn't say Stormcaller is the greatest for using it against bosses or anything like that. I think Stormcaller is just, the Stormcaller's brace is slightly worse than Dawn Chorus. I think Dawn Chorus makes your Dawnblade super do more damage than what the Storm Dancer's brace can. I haven't checked that, so don't quote me on this. If indeed it's that you can melt champions when you have Storm Dancer's race on, then I would put this at B tier, similar to Don Chorus. But I just, I can't ever seem to recall that this has done a ton of damage to elites or anything like that, or champions. So I'm gonna have to keep it at C tier. I did use this exotic a lot back in Season of the Undying when it pretty much came out, to help me complete all the triumphs, because I liked using it to pretty much just destroy ads in all the lost sectors. But it's just, Stormcaller isn't that great in PvE, unless you're using Crown of Crown of Tempest, but that's only in specific types of content. Next, we have Starfire Protocol. Starfire Protocol gives you 2 fusion aids. Fusion aids I don't think are very good. Maybe if you're running Well of Radiance and you get 2 healing nades, but it's just, I don't know. It's not that great, but it's not that bad. But it really restricts you in what types of classes you got to play. I think the only way to really benefit from this exotic is to use Well of Radiance and to have the two and just have like 2 healing nades. But when you're using Well of Radiance, you're probably just going to be using Phoenix Protocol, and in the next part here, you're probably just going to be using Lunafactions. So that wraps up the chess pieces. And for the final part of this tier list, for the PvE portion, I'm going to be talking about leg armor. And the first armor piece we have is Lunafactions, instant S tier. These things, even with the auto reloading nerf that they received, they are still top tier. Mostly because when you have Lunafactions on and you're in a Well of Radiance, they buff your range, so you have increased range while in a Well of Radiance or in an Empowering Rift. They also increase your reload speed. They give you similar speeds to that of Outlaw. I wouldn't say it's exactly Outlaw levels of reload speed, but it does still increase your reload speed to a point where it significantly helps you deal more damage, especially if you're sitting in a well. So S tier. Next up, Geomags, also S tier. Makes Chaos Reach so damn good to use. It extends your Chaos Reach, so when you're doing damage with Geomags on to a boss, um, I believe it's based off of the damage you're doing. It refunds your super, so it extends your super timer longer just by doing damage to bosses that you can't kill. So it just allows you to do more damage. And the other thing is that it gives you free super, where when you're at 3/4 of your super, and you're at that last bar, once you get to like, I want to say like 2/8 or 2/10 of that bar filled, that last final bar, it tops off your super and you get free super and it completes your super. Now you have Chaos Reach. That alone just makes this exotic so damn good. Next up, we have Transversives. And Transversives, I'm a little biased to because I do like running this in a lot of content, especially raids, just because how it moves, it buffs movement speed, and when I'm running around, it allows me to reload my weapons for free. However, not very good for Grandmaster content, not very good for Nightfall content. It's more like low tier, like patrol content, mid tier, and like raids where you know what you're doing. It's not like contest modifier, or it's not like, which will be in the future, is like the um, master modifiers they are introducing for raids in the future. So I will, as much as I want to give it a B tier, I'm just gonna have to stick it down with the C tier. It just, buffing your movement sometimes is quite helpful, especially with the auto reloading is a very nice thing to have. And then last but not least, we have Prometheum Spur. What this exotic does is when you kill enemies with your Dawnblade, it leaves an empowering rift at their feet. And I believe this rift is like a mini well, so not only is it an empowering rift, but it's also a healing rift at the same time. And honestly, F tier for me. And the reason that it's F tier is that it's just so not good. It's like, why would you go to an area where an ad has been killed? Like, especially say there's a bunch of red bars running at you. You kill, when you have Dawnblade, it's like you kill far away targets. You, most of the time you're not killing targets that are near you, and your allies are probably not looking to get to far away places either. So you kill an ad that's um like a decent distance away. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. It's a decent distance away. You kill that ad, it drops the rift down. Well, who cares? Who wants to run over to that rift and expose their entire body to all the elements of danger? Yeah, you get your buff damage and possibly healing, but it's like Why are you running over to where all the dead things are? You're trying to kill things in this game, and you're running over to where the dead things are? I don't think so. I just really don't think, like, if it dropped them at your feet, or if you could pick, like, if it dropped them on your allies, that would be pretty cool. Like, say I get a kill with my Dawn Blade and it drops a rift or a well on my allies, or like near my allies, that would be a lot better. That would actually be pretty nice to have, but since it doesn't do that, I can't really rate it that highly above F tier. To me, it's just F tier. It's always been F tier. And that pretty much wraps it up for the Warlock PvE tier list. So if you guys enjoyed this type of video, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and maybe following me on Twitch if you want to see me play Destiny or Battlefield or whatever I got going on in my life. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.